The Nimrod, a restaurant steeped in history and tradition, is located on Dillingham Avenue. Their phone number is 508-540-4132. They offer an extensive lunch and dinner menu for all your tastes and spirits for any occasion. The Nimrod features music to suit all moods in a warm atmosphere. The Nimrod is a proud sponsor of Falmouth Community Television and their coverage of town meeting. Stop by and visit us at the Nimrod Restaurant.
The Falmouth Chamber of Commerce is dedicated to ensuring the economic vitality of its member businesses. We seek to promote a supportive, innovative, and successful business environment. Member benefits include marketing and advertising opportunities, business referrals, medical and dental insurance, business after hours, new member receptions, comfortable network activities, and more. We exist to promote you and to help you prosper. The Falmouth Chamber of Commerce, serving Falmouth since 1914.
To the February 27th, 2012 meeting of the Board of Selectmen. If you would please join us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For those of you who have your cell phones with you, please put them on vibrate or turn them off. That would be a nice thing to do. If you wish to record the meeting, you may do so. If I don't see anybody here with a camera to televise it, but if you wish to do that, that would take a special permission. So I think we will move directly to our first agenda item, which is a discussion with our auditors, Rosselli, Clark and Associates, and Mr. Russell is here. Good evening.
Thank you.
Rosselli, I mean, not Russell. Sorry about that. Oh, yeah. Lights.
Thank you. I'm Tony Roselli, and I'm a partner with the accounting firm of Rosselli, Clark and Associates. And we have done the audit for the town of Falmouth for the year ended June 30, 2011, and tonight we'll present the results to the Executive Conference. Okay, today we're going to, what I'm going to talk about tonight is some of the economic trends, some of the accomplishments over the last year, some of the bigger accomplishments. I'm going to talk about other post-employment benefits, which is a big thing coming up for the town. Talk about some informational items, findings, and then I'll talk about departmental reviews that we did this year. We did 2 or 3 departmental reviews that I'll go through. Okay, first, what I want to just for the novices in the room, what exactly is an audit? An audit is the Government Finance Office of the United States puts out what's called the Yellow Book, the GAGAS, which basically goes through and tells how we as auditors need to do an audit for the town. It talks about internal control over major transactions, and major transactions for the town would be the treasurer's office, the collector's office, the assessor, the school department, basically where the high-risk areas are. That's where we focus our attention. And we follow the guidelines that are in this so-called Yellow Book. It also requires a special audit of the federal grants, which in the town are mostly school grants from the federal government. So we do a full-blown audit of the federal grants. And what's important to at the end of the audit is we either give a clean opinion or we qualify the opinion. Qualifying the opinion means that we found material problems during our process. If we don't find material problems, then we issue a clean opinion. And for this year, the town did get a clean opinion for 2011, so that's good news. Okay, any questions on this? Okay, moving right along. Okay, I want to talk about the economic trends. And what I did was a 5-year snapshot of where the reserve balances stand. And this is in millions of dollars. So you can see that going back to 2007, the town had about $5 million in reserves. Took a big dip down into 2009. What happened in 2009, that was the year of the 9C cuts. So that was a very challenging financial year for the town. And that's indicative through this chart. You can see where it dipped. And the good thing about this is the town has recovered and it's on its way back up. So this is a really, really nice chart. One of the good things about, 2009 was a bad year, but one of the good things about 2009 is it allowed you to retool. It allowed you to look at yourself and what do we need to do differently, because obviously there's economic challenges out there that we have to overcome. And the town has rebounded nicely from that by showing a nice steady graph, and I'd love to see that continue upward back to where it was in the early 2000s. If I had put this up going back 10 years, you'd see 9-10 million in reserves. So that would be nice to see.
Tony, could you just clarify
Sure.
9C cuts for people who might not know what that means?
The 9C cuts were, back in 2009, the state had a problem with their own budget, where they weren't going to meet their own financial obligations. So one of the areas they cut is the aid that they provide to the cities and towns. So if they had promised the town 10 million, they may have only sent them 8 or 9 million. They had to cut, and it was unfortunate, but they made that cut in the middle of the year, so it was almost unannounced. The town wasn't aware of it when they did their budget, so they had to act on it in the middle of the year. And most towns had to go in and use some of their reserves in order to preserve services rather than close libraries and lay people off.
Thank you.
I also did a reserve ratio, which shows the same chart, obviously, the up and the down. The reserve ratio is important because when Standard & Poor comes in and does your credit evaluation, they look at your reserve ratio percentage. 10% being an optimum number, 5% being the low. If you're going below 5%, they get a little nervous, which back in 2009, where you dropped all the way down to just over 1%, the S&P actually gave you a negative outlook. That has since been lifted. Right now you're at AA plus and AA plus, but beyond the reserves, the town also has $3 million in accounts called reserved for appropriations. These are accounts that supplement the annual budget. So the rating agencies, even though they're not stabilization or reserve, they still give you credit for those funds. So it gets you close to 9%, which is what substantiates the AA plus rating. And that's one notch below the highest rating, which would be AAA. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, some of the major accomplishments. A couple of these I had talked about 2 years ago. Number one, converted to a quarterly billing system, huge. No more cash flow deficits, no more having to borrow rands. You've eliminated finance charges, you've been able to do your tax recap. It's not a fire drill. Doesn't have to be done by October. You have till December now to do your set your tax rate. So it's given the town a lot of flexibility, not only cash flow wise, but also it's allowed you to set your tax rate later in the game, so you have better information available to you when you are setting your tax rate, and you can make adjustments accordingly. So I believe that was a very, very significant accomplishment. Secondly, the town voted to upgrade its current data processing system, and this was a little bit of a tussle, but I think in the long run this is going to be another great accomplishment. It's going to welcome Falmouth to the 21st century and really hopefully provide a lot of efficiency in your record keeping. Thirdly, there was a major restructuring as debt. As you're aware, debt is big. It's a big item in the town. You've done so much capital and whatnot that your budget for debt is a big line item, and the refinancing is going to save you a lot of money going forward in interest costs. And then finally, you appointed a town manager, which was an accomplishment. There was a period of time there where there wasn't a town manager, and the individuals here did a great job of keeping the town moving forward and in the right direction. And I've had time to meet with the town manager, and I believe he's very qualified, and I think the town is in good hands at this point. Any questions on these items? Okay, great. Okay, I want to talk about other post-employment benefits, which is a significant liability that the town is currently subject to. Basically, it relates basically to health insurance that you're going to pay your retired employees. You have to have an actuarial evaluation done every 2 years. The last one shows that you had almost $120 million as a future liability. Presently, the town doesn't have a funding mechanism in place, so you're not funding this liability, so it's only going to get bigger and bigger until there's some sort of mechanism in place. Particularly important because the average age of your employees is close to 50. I believe it's around 48.7, 49. That means a lot of people are going to be retiring in the next 10 to 12 years. And that's just going to make that liability bigger and bigger. And just a quick snapshot of where this is what you'll have to pay on an annual basis. Right now you're paying just over 3. You're going to be paying just under 8 in 10 years by 2021. So you can see that's a steep graph that you need to be preparing for now. That's a big, big difference. It's 5% of your budget. 5% of your budget. So that's a big thing that you need to prepare for. What I've recommended here is potentially looking at a 32B Section 20 trust, which what I understand is on the next town meeting warrant. So I encourage the voters to accept this this article and start the ball rolling on this liability. Any questions on the OPEB?
Well, I understand the OPEB, but I know the trust fund also, it's irrevocable or irrevocable, as you
Yes.
say? So whatever monies go into it cannot come out
That's right.
at all?
That's right.
Except for the purpose for which it was funded,
That's right.
which are the health benefits?
Right.
So it's a major, major step that the town will have to take, and it will require a lot of, I think, education and discussion for town meeting members and generally townspeople.
Yes, no, I agree. It is a major step. Once you've made that commitment, the money is for retired health insurance premiums and cannot be used to fund salaries and other municipal costs. So it is a significant step. Many towns are now going to this step. I believe only 2 in the state are really on a full funding schedule. So you're not in the minority right now. But it's something that, the startling number is the 120 million. That's just a big nut to swallow. And like I said, it gets bigger and bigger. I don't think it's going to go away. We thought with the Obama healthcare reform that it would somehow impact this, but it really isn't. It's not going away. So I'm not sure what the state has in mind at this point.
Brent?
Now, that 119.4, is that a total number, or is that an annual liability? How does that work?
It's, what the 119 represents is if you were to be fully funded right now, in other words, all you would be drawing from is a fund, and you wouldn't have to do a pay-as-you-go, you would need 120 million today in a fund, and you wouldn't have to worry about paying employees because they would draw from that fund. That's what represents. So it's the present value of a much bigger number 30 years from now. But the Department of Revenue has a good portion of the website, of their website, just directed to this, and much more knowledge on how this all works. And at some point, it may make sense too to have your actuary, the person that actually does the study, to maybe come in and do a 15, 20-minute presentation just to educate everyone on how they got to the 119 and exactly what that means. I think that would be a great idea. Any other questions on OPEB? Okay, moving forward, we've gone through this chart. Okay, other informational items. And again, these are not findings, they're just informational items that I'd like to communicate to the town. SAS 114, SAS stands for Statement on Auditing Standards. 115 tells us that if we have a material finding, we have to communicate it to the town. There were no material findings. There were findings, but they weren't material findings. So that's good news. Secondly, and I know that I've had this in my management letter for years, I don't think the town's going to act on it, but it will be a smaller and smaller line item. Just because the Department of Revenue recommends it and we recommend it, is just a conversion of water and sewer to enterprise. So most cities and towns treat them as enterprise funds. The detriment to the general fund is when water and sewer is having a bad year, the general fund's going to have a bad year. When water and sewer is having a good year, the general fund's going to have a good year. When it's on its own, it has to be absorbed through rates. So it's not hemorrhaging the general fund when it's having a bad year. So it has its pluses and minuses.
A question, in your experience, when a town converts to an enterprise fund, say particularly in sewer, because most everybody's on water, I should say most everybody, because there are some who are probably still on private wells, but not everybody is on the sewer.
Right.
And does it happen that the rates for people who are on a sewer, that they would see significant increases in their rates if there were an enterprise fund?
What you would do is you do 2 enterprise funds because there is a different base. If everyone was on water and sewer, one enterprise fund is fine. But because you have a different base, you would do 2 enterprise funds. So the sewer users would get a sewer bill, the water users who are on septic would only get a water bill. They wouldn't get the sewer bill. So it would be equitable in that regard. And I understand that's one of the stumbling blocks, is they're so intermingled at this point that it's going to be hard to separate it out. De minimis personal property taxes. What a lot of towns are doing, in fact, there's about 100 in the state, is they've given an exemption to certain personal property tax. Amounts less than $10,000 is what I'm seeing. In Falmouth, if a $10,000 assessment makes a $77 property tax, okay? By the time you've processed it, billed it, mailed it, attempted to collect it, and done everything you need, is it really worth that $77? And you don't lose the $77, it gets distributed over the rest of the tax base. And I had one other town do an analysis, their assessing department did an analysis, that it would increase the rest of the taxes by less than 1 cent, and it would have eliminated, in that situation, they did 4,000, an exemption up to 4,000, 556 property tax bills. So it would create efficiency within the collector's department, and the ones you're typically chasing around are the 13s and the 14s and the 18s. Those are the ones that just kind of sit there. Businesses go out of business and you don't know what to do with them. So I highly encourage you to create the article and adopt some legislation on that particular item. Health insurance question on property taxes? Okay, health insurance legislation. There is new legislation that was passed in July or August, as you're all well aware. One of the legislative acts or portions of this bill was to make sure that the town is, if a person is saying that they're married or that they have a family, that there's a process done every 2 years to assure that people are who they are. It's called an audit of the insurance rolls, to make sure that people who have passed away are no longer on the insurance rolls. So the legislature passed an act that every 2 years, a town or a health insurance provider has to go through that process. And from what I understand, this is going to be done through the Cape Cod Regional Health Consortium. So it should be taken care of up at the top level because you belong to a consortium.
You heard the old story about Springfield and their health insurance plan. They never audited the plan to
Yes.
see how many people were on it or who was on it. And then when Springfield went into bankruptcy, and they had to have a special, what do they have? A special,
Receivership.
yeah, in receivership. They audited the health insurance and found out that the Springfield City Orchestra was on the town's health insurance plan, along with a lot of other entities that nobody knew about. You haven't heard that story?
I didn't hear that story, but I've done audits of health insurance plans, and I found one that had a daycare center. The employees of the daycare center were on the plan, obviously because they knew somebody and they allowed them to come onto the plan. I found numerous situations where people that have passed away are still on the plan and the towns are paying for it. So it's actually a good thing that this is happening and it's being forced upon by the legislature.
Well, I just want to make another comment, because I think a town's HR department can do a great job here, particularly when new people are hired, to make sure that you have marriage certificates and birth certificates of children, and any time, and periodically, if people are divorced, that those papers are brought in. So that, and when you review the plans and send out the information, it's, I think the HR department on a routine basis, every 6 months, can probably do a very good job in keeping the town employees compliant with the health insurance plan.
I think they could. It should be part of the process. It should be.
Melissa?
Before we go too far, can we back up to the de minimis?
De minimis personal property, sure.
Personal property taxes. Just recently, we switched our bill payment to a consortium in Reading, I guess. I know
Okay.
that our addresses go there, and I'm wondering, I understand, of course, the concept that, it's the old $10 donation to a corporation ends up costing them more than $10 in labor to cash it and do all that work. But if we're already employing another group to do all of the processing, where does it end up being beneficial?
What about the
to town?
collection aspect of it? Is the Reading just a billing?
Okay.
I guess I need to know a little bit more about that.
It's just a billing.
It's just a billing act?
I think what she's asking is, that would all be taken care of in the assessing department prior to going to billing.
Oh, okay, okay. And then also, is this all, I mean, you have it up there as personal property taxes in here, so it's personnel, so, but I'm
That was the
guessing-
typo.
Yeah, there was a typo on that.
Okay, but it's personal property taxes, so it's not just land, but it's also perhaps, do we do, I know a lot of Cape Cod towns do second residence contents of houses. Is it also that?
Those are personal
Yeah.
property, yes.
Yeah, so, do we know the history of implementing the interior contents? Well, I guess those are
Yes.
questions to ask
Yes.
later. I'll ask those questions later, I guess.
I don't see Dave here. He would have been a good...
Yes, I used to work in the assessor's
Mary Ellen,
office.
could you go to the microphone?
Yeah, I
Sorry.
can't ask you to be
Meant
up
to
here, I'm
ask
not
you to
the
do that
chair.
before.
I'm sorry, Mary Ellen Alwat, Town Accountant. The answer to your question is yes. I used to work in the assessor's office, so the town of Falmouth does do personal property for second homes. Its
Okay.
contents is commercial buildings get taxed on their equipment,
Okay.
and we pursue it and we collect it.
Okay.
So, I don't know if everyone heard me in the beginning, but the way to handle this would be handled in the assessor's department prior to billing, so they wouldn't be billed if it was under whatever the town chose.
Whatever the town decided.
$4,000, $5,000, $10,000.
Okay, and so these bills, these personal property taxes go out as separate bills than the property taxes?
Yes.
They're not combined into one
No.
bill? Are they legally not allowed to be in one bill?
Don't remember the answer to
Okay.
that question. Sorry.
You wouldn't know anything about it if you were not a second homeowner, or if you
Yeah.
didn't own a business that had its equipment taxed. It's separate, and it has nothing to
I guess
do with the property tax.
I guess I'm just thinking that, in these days when we're
Yeah.
so strapped for revenues, that it just seems antithetical to,
It doesn't
But
reduce
it's
your
always been
revenues,
this
though.
way.
no, it seems antithetical to eliminate some
Oh, to
the stream of
eliminate
it.
revenue.
It does-
But if it,
Just real clarification, it doesn't eliminate your revenues.
that's true, it redistributes
The
it.
revenues get redistributed, and like I said, another town
Yeah,
did it
1
for
penny.
4,000, and it added less than a penny to everybody else's tax. It was inconsequential. So it was a no-brainer for them. They said, yeah, let's eliminate these 556 bills. Even if it required only 5 minutes of time, it's still 5 minutes saved. And again, this is just here just to have the assessors analyze it. It's not saying do it, it's saying analyze it. What does it eliminate? What does it save? Does it make sense?
Okay.
That's really the point of the comment.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Charts of account.
Yeah, I want to talk about chart of accounts real quick. I want to make sure that everyone's aware that you could have the best system in the world. If you don't have a properly designed chart of accounts, it's not going to work. It's going to fail. And it should, and particularly here where you have such a large school department, everything's got to be working in synergy. And so it's important that as you're going through this, to put a lot of effort into your chart of accounts. Next, line item budget terminology. I wanted to just comment that the wages and salaries line in your budget, I wanted to recommend that you change that to personnel services, just so you have more flexibility. Now you can put 1099, consultants, you can put different things through that without having to jump through hoops and hurdles. So it provides you with a little bit more flexibility there. Wages is wages. So so I just wanted to add that. Ambulance, outstanding charges. First, I just want to say that the town's outstanding charges are at a fairly good level when I compare it to all my other towns that have ambulance services. Many of them have outstanding receivables that are close to 100% of their revenue. Here in Falmouth, you're at about 30%. I put this here because it was the ambulance charges, even though they're good, they were 25% off of last year. So it pointed to me that there might have been a trend emerging that I just wanted to alert the fire people to before such an event happened. And then last but not least, I know the town is evaluating the creation of a finance director, and I would support that. Many of the towns on the Cape, especially the larger ones, have the finance director form of organization. Most of the largest cities and towns in the state have that, so I would definitely support that. The finance director, to me, would provide a policy-making body that you don't have treasurer-collector that's got policies, accountants that got policies, assessor. It would provide one policy-making board that everybody answers to. So I think it would make the operation run in a seamless fashion. The way it's done now is not broke. I think the individuals are doing a great job of communicating to each other, which is typically the problem when you talk finance director, other people communicating, and they are, and they're doing a very nice job. But this is really the direction that the town should be going in, given the size and the activity that's going on in the town. Okay? Oops. Sorry about that. Okay, now some findings. The red flags regulations, I know that a policy was drafted. I don't think it's been voted on and accepted yet by the Board of Selectmen. So red flags deals with security, protection of social security numbers, different personal information, and it basically, the red flags just wants the town to document how they preserve that information and keep it from being compromised. That's red flags. Last year, we had a number of items in the personnel, human resource. I-9s were missing, W-4s were missing, ethics compliance was missing. A lot of that was done much better this year. I think there was only one I-9 form missing and only one W-4, so that got cleaned up. Title I is a finding out of the grant audit, and it's a minor finding on one of the schools. They had a compliance issue. We checked 2012 with the state, and that's been corrected, so there's no need to spend a lot of time on that since it's been fixed. Next item is policies and procedures manual. A town of this size should have a comprehensive resource to go to on how to handle things. Each department has their own little set of rules and regulations, but it really needs to be in one comprehensive, thought-out manual so that when people leave and other people come in, they've got a resource to go to and understand how to do a transaction or how to handle a certain item. So I think it's important that something like this is developed, and this is something that if the finance director goes through, that this is something that should go on their plate, you know, to create. That would be one of their tasks, to just get in there, and just the resources are limited now. It would be too difficult to put together. And then finally, on the general findings, we found that there were 2 bank accounts external to the town that were using the town ID number. One was a Sunshine Fund that's been subsequently shut down, and the other was the town band. If the town band needs to be part of the town, then the bank account should be part of the town, and all the revenue and checks should be going through the town. If it's going to be separate, then it has to be a separate entity. So I was pointing that out because this is a very, very risky area. There's been a lot of fraud in individuals setting up bank accounts with town ID numbers, and I point to Saugus with the library there. There was a separate bank account set up, and $800,000 was stolen. So it's a very, very risky area because the accountant and the treasurer don't have oversight over these bank accounts. So periodically, the treasurer should be checking the local banks just to make sure that nobody's using the ID number or the town of Falmouth inappropriately.
Brent?
You had a question?
When you say the ID number, is this the tax ID?
The town's,
So,
tax ID
in
number.
essence, they'd be using the town, getting the town's tax favored status, if you will?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Oh, again. Keep doing that. Is it broken? I think the point is up.
You broke it.
No? Let me go backwards. Oh, there we go. Okay, I think we're on. Did you do something?
No.
Did you click it forward?
I
Okay.
did move it forward.
All right, as part of the audit, we did 3 reviews of departments. We looked at natural resources, inspectional services, and we did, what was the last one? Harbor master. Each year, we do 3 departments. We've done some of the others that we've done in the past with the beach, what else did we do? The rec department, yeah. So we've done, over the years, we've done quite a few of these, and I want to go through what we've done on, what came up on natural resources, the first one. Number one, the payroll process was very inefficient, just the way they were doing it manually, and it was just crazy calculations for overtime, there were errors, so that's been fixed from what I understand, but when we were going through it, it was really arduous. Second, when I was interviewing the gentleman over there, he said that physical exams aren't required as part of the employment, and to me, that's a physical activity. You know, you could be chasing people through woods, you could be climbing trees, you could be doing really physical, rigorous activity, and there's no medical exam required. So this is something that you may want to bring up at the bargaining table, because to me, there could be a safety issue there. If someone who isn't medically suitable has a problem, and you've hired them, the town could be liable in that regard. Lack of office resources. They don't have fax machines or copiers. They have to copy something. They have to get in their car, drive to town hall, and drive back, which I thought was crazy. So, you know, giving them a small copier and a fax machine, hopefully that's been done at this point, just so they can, maybe a scanner so they can scan stuff to town hall instead of having to drive back and forth. And then finally, we looked at cash handling in this department, which is under the animal control. And the funds are only turned over once a month, which I thought was a problem in the summer because it's a lot of activity in the summer. There's no safe, so it's in a drawer. There's no reconciliation back to the original receipt. So there's some problems there on the that really need to be cleaned up.
Ben?
Earlier, you said that your opinion, you gave us a clean opinion versus a qualified opinion. Here we have a department where it seems like there's no cash controls whatsoever. So, I mean, how do we know? It seems to me we couldn't know that there's how much cash is going in and out on a regular basis.
Right, under the accounting standards, I mean, that the town is $118 million going in and out. The total cash handled by this department's about $4,000.
Okay.
So that's why when we say that it's a bad practice, but it's not enough to qualify the opinion for the overall entity.
All right, thank you.
Okay, good. I'm glad I clarified that. That is a good question, though. So yes, you'll find that, and this is where we do find, when we do these departmental reviews, this is where we find some of our problems with, especially with reconciliation. I don't find that if you've serviced 10 dogs, you brought them in and you're charging them, you should be able to do a simple reconciliation. 10 times the boarding fee should be what I have. If I pay for rabies, 10 times the rabies shot is what I should have. So that's not being done in a lot of situations at the departmental level, which I would like to see change, just so they can have some accountability at the departmental level. And this is why we do these these audits and try to pick off 2 or 3 at a time every year.
Melissa?
Will the new data processing system that we're implementing here in town have any impact on these issues with either this department or the other one?
It could. It could. If you wanted to go to this level, as low as this level, you could, and the other departments. Typically, the software that you purchase is going to handle the treasurer, collector, the school, the accountant, and normally doesn't go to this level, but they do have the capability of getting there. If you want a small program set up for these departments, I think it could be done.
Because it might also then streamline their labor that they have to put into this. I mean, it sounds like they had a fairly inane payroll process. I mean, if they can get this streamlined and computerized, then maybe.
Yes. At a minimum, I'd like to see Excel or something. I mean, it's all, written in manual, so when you add it up, it doesn't add up, and it didn't make sense. A lot of sense.
I can't believe they need a copier. I can't believe they don't have that, but, okay.
And I guess they hadn't spoke up. They were just driving back and forth, so.
I just want to let you know we have a public hearing at 1:15, so if we can.
Okay, real quick then.
Yeah.
Harbor Master, some of this, I believe, will be solved through the conversion, because this is a big enough department to go in and look at some better collection software, better billing software. In this situation, again, we've got lack of reconciliations on the revenue. And the seasonal slips, we found out, were not signed by the Harbor Master. They're only signed by the owner. I think there should be unilateral signatures there. Last point here is that the harbor's expanded significantly in the last 3 or 4 years. And just keep an eye on the employment resources, because you don't want to create a safety issue. You want to be able to still have enough coverage to cover all the activities of the harbor. So just make sure that that's something to keep in the back of your heads as you go through that. And then last but not least, the inspectional services. Again, it's, the collections aren't turned in on as quickly as they should. What I'm suggesting here is potentially using credit cards to get the cash in quicker. The cash handling isn't segregated, and they have a Municity program there, but it doesn't agree to the turnover, because the turnover is done in Excel. So there's extra steps to make it agree. And then lastly here, there was a part-time employee that was reduced, and coincidentally, that was at the time when revenues were at record highs and state reporting requirements were increasing. So what we're seeing is boxes piling up because the records aren't being archived electronically. Filings are getting done quickly, so they're resulting in errors. So keep an eye on that too, because it looks like some of the work is not being done as efficiently as the past. And that concludes my presentation. Any other questions?
Any other questions? No? No, thank you very much. I found that very helpful. I found it much more interesting reading than watching the Academy Awards last night, so thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm not Billy Joel, but...
Okay. Now, I know AmeriCorps is here. We do have a public hearing in 5 minutes. Can you do your program in 5 minutes? Okay. I want you to know these are some of my favorite people from Barnstable County, so I welcome you tonight.
Thank you. So as you said, we're from AmeriCorps Cape Cod. My name is Kelsey, and I'm from New Jersey. I went to school at Lafayette College in Pennsylvania, and I work with the Town of Falmouth DPW Engineering Department on Tuesdays. I'm helping out with their stormwater permitting, doing education and outreach, and also mapping the stormwater throughout the town.
I'm Jan Zrati. I'm from Boise, Idaho. I went to Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania, and I work at LaQuoit Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And you might be familiar with AmeriCorps Cape Cod. We've done a lot of projects in Falmouth. Just today, we planted beach grass at Menahunt Beach. We've worked on garden bed maintenance at the Falmouth Service Center. We've worked on aquaculture research projects at the MBL and Woods Hole. We've also done education projects. With Morse Pond School, we did a water festival to teach them about water in a fun way. And through my IP at LaQuoit Bay, we partnered with the Lawrence School, to help the 8th graders there think about Shiverix Pond, which is right next to the school, to think about the health of the pond, sources of pollution, and what they can do to make a difference.
So we also do service in all 15 towns across the Cape, and our focus areas are natural resource management, disaster preparedness and response, community outreach, and volunteer engagement.
We're funded through grants from the Corporation for National and Community Service and the Massachusetts Service Alliance, and those are match funded through Barnstable County.
We have 26 members, so we have 14 in Bourne and 14 in Wellfleet, and the Bourne House is provided by Barnstable County, and the Wellfleet House is provided by the National Park Service.
We split our weeks up doing different projects each day. Monday and Friday, we do group service projects within our focus areas. The other days of the week, we have our individual placements, which give us a chance to take initiative and do projects on the Cape. And another day of the week, we have a community outreach development day, which allows us the opportunity to organize larger volunteer engagement projects on the Cape, like MLK Day, Canal Cleanup, and AmeriCorps Week.
So we have some folders that give you a bit more of an idea about what AmeriCorps Cape Cod is, and they also have project proposal forms. So if there are things that need to be done around the town, those can be submitted, and hopefully we can add them to our schedule.
Thanks so much for your time, and if you have any questions.
Well, I have a question. What was your major in college, and how did that affect your wanting to come, joining AmeriCorps?
Thank you.
Well, I was a geology and policy studies major in college, so it's the combination of environmental practices, both from an economic point of view and then a science point of view. And this was a really great way to do field work while working with towns to really kind of engage both of those majors.
And I was an engineering and gender and sexuality studies major, and I really cared about how engineering and the environment go together and how research I do, whatever I dedicate my life to, really can help the environment. And I really wanted to give a year back to the community. I figured AmeriCorps was a great way to jump right in.
So how are things going in the Bourne House?
They're great.
Are you having fun? Are you taking lots of pictures? So that when it comes time for your graduation, we'll have a great show like you had last year?
Yeah, so.
Boise to Cape Cod, that's quite a stretch there, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm really glad I'm placed at LaQuoit Bay because I really didn't know anything about the ocean and the issues facing the bay, all of Cape Cod, so I've learned a lot in my time here.
Good. Only 1 year, though, that's too bad.
Well, so they can re-up. I mean, some of, I think, tell me his name, not Aaron. Yeah, he was here the year before. Hi.
Yes, hi.
Why don't you come up and introduce yourself?
Sure. So, my name is Keith Hopkins. I'm originally from Monroe, New York, and I came to AmeriCorps Cape Cod last year as a member, and then I stayed on this year as a staff member. So I'm the program supervisor in the Bourne House. So my responsibilities are, basically supervising the members and planning and coordinating projects.
Good. Well, you do a really great job, and I tell you that all the time, so
Thank you.
it's true.
Thank you.
And we're so grateful to have you, and we're so grateful for the funding that keeps the program alive, because I think it was last year that we figured out the AmeriCorps volunteers had actually provided about over $10 million worth of service to Cape Cod in the 11 years that they had been here. So that's huge. That's $11 million or $10 million that the towns didn't have, and what you were able to give to the towns was just amazing. So thank you so much for your service, and thank you for coming tonight.
Yep. Thank you for having us.
Okay. Bye. Don. Oh, Peter, did you want to add something?
Don Hoffa, Beach Superintendent. I just want to say we had 4 AmeriCorps people planting seagrass today at Minot Beach. Did an outstanding job.
Great.
Peter Garner, the acting town engineer. I just wanted to express a great appreciation to AmeriCorps for helping with the engineering department, particularly with Kelsey Boyd. She had worked with our office for the past several months working on the stormwater program. The town is required to fulfill the commitment for the EPA stormwater permit. And it requires Phase 2, the stormwater permit. We're going into Phase 3 stormwater permit, which is going to be, it's more testing, dry testing, well testing. And Kelsey's been working with our department. For the past several months, she was going out with our crews to open up the manholes to see where the stormwater is going, the outfalls. And what we have done is we worked with the Water Quality Committee was working with the ponds, the coastal ponds. And we worked down there. We started in that areas because they were looking at that areas for Little Pond. So we started in those areas and all those side streets, picking up all the stormwater control and all the runoff from the stormwater control. And it's been a great help. This book right here is the town's requirement to follow the EPA stormwater guide. And what it is it has all the streets in the book, all the streets in Falmouth, including all our street sweeping program, our catch basin cleaning program, and the number of catch basins. And then also working with the GIS department, we have all the assessors maps. They're all labeled out large enough for us to see them with all the catch basins and all the street sweeping routes that we do take. So we do a quantity of all the street sweeping that we do. And particularly what Kelsey has been working on in the past several months is these are some brochures and some projects that we've been working on. I'd just like to pass it down.
Thanks.
They're door.
I saw one of these the other day.
Yeah, the door hangers that we started putting on some of the residents, the full-time, year-round residents down at Little Pond. Those plaques are actually the plaques that we glue down to all the catch basins. It's all part of the public outreach requirement for our stormwater permit. So she has been a great help with working with us. So I'd like to extend that appreciation very much.
Only rain down the drain.
No rain down the drain, and she actually
only rain down the drain.
Only rain.
Only rain down the drain.
And she actually created that template, and they've been out. It's double the size, but they go out with the blue paint and spray it up. It's a striped bass.
There you go.
That's great. Well, I know one thing, that at least the weather this year has been a little more temperate, and it hasn't been as hard as it was last year. I know last year was a pretty difficult winter for working outdoors. So I'm sure that they accomplished a lot more with the help of the weather. That's great. Okay. Very good. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Peter, for coming, and Don. That was great. Okay, now we have a public hearing on a shade tree removal. Notice is hereby given of a public hearing to be held by the Falmouth Board of Selectmen in the Selectmen's Meeting Room Monday, February 27th, 2012 at 7:45 p.m. on the application of Andrew Borghese. That's correct. Borghese? Borghese. In Integrata Construction for the removal of one tree, a Norway maple, at the following location: 27 Knobska Road. Removal is necessary because the tree is located in the only possible area for driveway access. And we have Rocky Gomes is here. Rocky, would you like to make a presentation on this application, if you would?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
I did review this tree at 27 Knobska Road with Mr. Borghese, and my recommendation is to remove the tree. It's kind of a strange lot where he needs to get the modular units in. There's 11-inch maple right in the way. It's about 40 foot tall. It's in good condition. I have spoke to him, and I haven't talked to the homeowners. He has agreed that we will replant the area with a 4 to 5 inch diameter tree. We do have a list that I will go over with the homeowners to decide what we'll put in front of there. Now, on this application, you'll see they noted a second tree. That second tree will be a separate hearing. I'm waiting for the trees to bud out this spring, because I have quite a few trees that need to be put, compiled into a hearing, so we'll deal with that one then. He had just put that on there, but that one's not an issue. It's the smaller one that was next to it.
So the one we're referring to tonight is the 40-foot Norway maple?
Yes, the 11-inch one. It's the one with actually the sticker on it, the hearing sticker.
Yeah.
Melissa?
So I was down there the other day looking at it, and I was actually looking for the other one, too, when it was the split tree. But
Can you talk a little louder?
The Norway maple, though, is an invasive species.
Yes, it is.
So if we were to remove this, I mean, it's, so this is to help a modular house get into the property? It seemed like an awkward piece of property.
Right.
You said that it would be replanted with a native species?
A native
tree?
species, yes.
Okay.
We do have a list of native species. Like I said, I'll go over it with them, and they do agree to plant the tree. We just haven't decided which one it would be yet, but certainly will happen.
It's an invasive species. It's a
Question,
non-native
yeah.
invasive.
Questions from the board? No?
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion that we approve the recommendation and approve the removal of the tree.
And the replacement as recommended?
As recommended.
Yeah.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much, Rocky.
Thank you.
And I guess we'll see you when there's another tree.
This is Frank.
Okay.
If there's another tree.
If there is another tree. Thank you. Okay, the next item we're now going to hear presentations from those who have petition articles before the special town meeting. Special? Yes. And our first presenter is Brent Putnam.
If you don't mind, Madam Chair, I'll...
Surely.
Madam Chair, members of the board, good evening.
Good evening.
For the record, my name is Brent Putnam. As you know, I'm a member of the Board of Selectmen. I'm also a representative of Precinct 9 in town meeting, and I have the distinction of being the first name on this particular article, therefore I'm considered the petitioner. But I would remind the board that there were more than 100 signatures gathered, and in fact there were a number of sheets that were not collected and presented simply because time did not allow us to get them in. So this was a popular article, if you will, with the general public. In essence, and for the public's edification, the article reads, "To see if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money to be made available for the purpose of conducting an inquiry into the reasons behind the cost overruns associated with the high school renovation project, as recommended by Article 42 of the November 2008 Fall Town Meeting, and to be expended under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen, or do or take any other action on this matter." For the board's recollection, in April of 2008, 34 town meeting representatives presented a petition to the board asking for such an inquiry. And then, as just noted, in November of 2008, town meeting approved on a voice vote an article which was more or less an opinion. At the time, it had no funding, and as you all know, the board is the sole authority in terms of conducting inquiries and investigations as provided by the charter. But in both cases, of course, town meeting has spoken very loudly that they would like to see this done. The question, of course, is why? And I would quote Governor Patrick when he said, "In a successful democracy, the currency of government is not money, it's integrity." Trust in government is established by opening the doors and showing people what's going on. In this particular case, we must show the people what happened. We must prove that we learned something from the experience and that we're simply not brushing it under the rug. We must take steps to ensure that it does not happen again. And we must reestablish trust with the people. There are other projects that are in the pipeline. Most notable, of course, is the issue of nitrogen mitigation and the sewer projects. There are other projects which are sort of hidden and not talked about or not considered, but they are down the road. For example, Lawrence School itself is probably our oldest active school. Now that the Mullen Hall building has been renovated, it's logical to presume that at some point in the next 10 years or so, the Lawrence School may require some renovation. In both of these cases, we need to make sure that the people have trust in town government. And if they don't, obviously, they're not going to step up and they're not going to pay for these things. They're not going to approve future overrides. There are objections. There are some folks who may suggest that this is finger pointing, but I would suggest that this is exactly the opposite. If this was finger pointing, the board could have undertaken this sort of investigation 3 years ago, and it could have done it itself. It would have been a political process at the time, invoked by and managed by a group of politicians. What I'm suggesting here, and what the article in 2008 asked for, was to do this at the conclusion of the project and have an independent third party do this. There are some who might suggest that we already have answers, that we already know what went wrong here. Well, there's a lot of speculation, and of course speculation, as you know, leads to finger pointing. What we need are actual facts. We need to know what happened so we don't repeat those very same mistakes. And finally, of course, the question is, or the issue is that it will cost money, and of course it will. We're going to ask an independent party to come in and do this, and nobody's going to do it freely. But I will make a recommendation to this board. And I would, Madam Chair, hope that you would consider this a formal request that this be placed on the board's agenda. That the board actually undertake the process, because it is the board's authority. What this article does simply is to provide funding for this. But funding, whether it's provided or not, the board needs to undertake its own process in order to begin this. My recommendation is that the board take this on as an agenda item, that it issue an RFP, get an accurate number for the cost, because that is something that I'm still researching, but it's a very difficult figure to pin down if we don't understand what it is that we're looking for, which is why the board, I think, really needs to begin this process, figure out what it is that we want to get out of it, and then issue an RFP and see what comes in terms of bids and costs. And then we could come back in the fall with an exact number, provide it to the people, ask town meeting to fund it, and then undertake the process. It's my hope, to be perfectly honest with you, that we undertake this process and then we don't have to go down the road of actually asking town meeting to pass this article here in the spring. If the board chooses not to undertake the process, not to issue the RFP, I would say that town meeting reserves the right to nudge the board along, if you will, in this process. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So, do I hear you say that you would be recommending indefinite postponement on this for the spring, and then ask the board to put it on the agenda at a time certain, not too far in the future? I mean, soon?
If the board could undertake this in the next month, I would be happy to stand up in front of town meeting and say exactly that the board is undertaking this process, and that I and the board recommend indefinite postponement.
That's my question. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I actually had two, but you already started approaching one of them, and it has to do with funding, of course. And I was going to ask you how much it's going to cost. You don't know yet. I understand what you're requesting the board to do, and I think that's probably the better way to go about here. But if this does go to town meeting, and how would you propose that it be funded this April or for June?
At this point, it's looking like free cash. I'm still trying to figure out the numbers, of course. The difficult part about doing this at this point in time is, as I noted, pinning down the exact figure. Until the board can actually decide what it wants to get out of this process, it's very difficult when you approach these companies that do this sort of thing and they give you wild estimates across the board. It's a lot easier, would be a lot easier, if the board would undertake this process, would issue an RFP where we could define the requirements and then get actual quotes back, in which case we could take those quotes to town meeting in the fall and say, this is what we propose to do, and this is the funding that we would require for it.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you, Brent.
Thank you.
Okay, and our next petitioner is Linda Davis. Linda, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Suso and Ms. Harper. Article 14 is to see if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money for the purpose of leasing, installing, and maintaining portable bathroom lavatory facilities for Minot Beach in East Falmouth for the 2012 summer season, to determine how the same shall be raised and by whom expended, or do or take any action on this matter. On petition of myself and many others. There is a need to have adequate bathroom facilities in Minot Beach, certainly for its residents, but also for the many residents, the many tourists who come. It is a revenue-generating beach. And last year, we've had what we all know as bounce houses, and they're really not adequate to provide the kind of sanitary conditions that you want. So the request here is for a portable unit, bathrooms only. There was previously a trailer that had a concession unit at the end, but this is smaller, more compact, more efficient. I'd like to thank people actually for helping me shape this article. Before I submitted the article, I did go to the beach committee and the beach department, the director of the public works, the town council, and they all were very helpful in shaping the article. Of course, finding the money is the second issue. And you know, I certainly do understand the constraints of the 2012 budget, but I was hoping that, you know, we could squeeze out some money for that. As you can see, the cost of the trailer, estimates that the superintendent of the beaches has received, runs roughly about $10,000 for a rental unit for the season. After looking and speaking and making my case, you can see in front of you that the solution, the possible solution here, is to transfer $10,000 from the town's waste management budget, and there's an item there, a number, to the highway department budget item number, and Ms. Harper said that she was going to get that number so that we would make this as clear as possible, for the purpose of this article to be expended under the direction of the Department of Public Works. So we're talking about a transfer of money here for this fiscal year 2012 of $10,000 to make this happen. You should know that last year, Friends of Minot Beach, a part of the East Falmouth Village Association, had a fundraiser. We raised over $1,600 for the donation account for Minot Beach, and the board has voted to allocate a sum of money, yet to be determined, to help with these expenses if needed. So you know that the community is very much supporting this. So there you have it. I must say, however, that in addition to the beaches being my favorite issue, my second favorite issue is trash and the waste management facility. So I'm somehow going to have to reconcile this movement of money with myself. So, but I'm sure in the future we'll find solutions for that too. So that's it.
I want to add a couple of things to this, because I did meet with Linda, and Linda also met with our town manager, and also Ray Jack, and many other people. And as you probably know, that the money to maintain a trailer is already, not a trailer, but the operation and the maintenance is already in the budget now. So the only thing that was missing was the actual cost of the lease for the trailer, which Don Hoffer tells us is in the neighborhood of $10,000. So because of the fact that the trash has been somewhat reduced at the waste management facility, Ray Jack has a line item that he believes that how do I want to say it? That he has a line item with funds that are probably not going to be utilized for the purposes for which they were intended, which was a solid waste facility. So he would be willing to allow that $10,000 to be transferred from the town's waste management budget item to the highway department, which covers the beach department, which would allow the town to lease that trailer for this summer only, and then try to see what could be done after that. So Linda has met with the town manager, Ray Jack, and myself, and we all concurred that this was a good solution for one summer. Something needed to be done. You can't have paved beaches if you don't have facilities for people to use, and this was a very good solution, and it did not impact any other area of the town. Melissa?
Had there been any discussion about the water quality management's need for finding composting toilet test areas with this? Because I know that they have some monies that the town voted to.
I can't speak directly to that. I have spoken with the superintendent of beaches who is here about that. I know he has approached that committee about this. I do think that for next year and the years to come, a permanent solution needs to be found. And when I say permanent, I don't necessarily mean a structure, but, you know, a way of accommodating the public there. And that may be something to pursue, along with maybe some other options. But there is a need to look at it carefully and closely in the future.
And I think that's a good point. It's just that the time constraints don't allow any other solution. Of course, this requires a vote of town meeting, and but Linda hopes that the board would agree with the funding source. So we're not voting on anything tonight, Linda. We make our recommendations next week.
Okay,
but
thank you very much.
But you were very diligent in all of your work, and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Friends of Minot Beach.
Okay, and then our third petitioner is Mark Finneran, which is Article 15.
Good evening. My article is Article 15. It basically asks the town to, in lieu of the override, which we seem to need, in order to lessen the impact on the taxpayer, to defund the CPC and apply those funds to capital projects and unfunded liabilities, which we just saw from Mr. Roselli is in the tune of almost 120 million. 3 weeks ago, it was 113, so it seems to be climbing rather rapidly. I'm all in favor of open space, but if anybody were to look at an aerial photograph of Falmouth or climb in a plane or a helicopter and fly overhead, you'd see that Falmouth is majority open space. When the 300 committee first was chartered, they wanted to save 300 acres of open space, and I think that's a fine and amiable pursuit. At this point, they have about 2,700 acres, which is 9 times their mandate. Falmouth's 10,000 acres, 44 square miles, so that amounts to over a quarter of the land space in this town. The state owns another quarter, so basically we're down to half of our own property. They started buying off large parcels, which was fine, but of late, they've been purchasing individual properties right off the tax rolls, which is kind of a double whammy for the taxpayer. I mean, first we have to pay for the property, and then we have to suffer the fact that that's not a taxable asset anymore. As I say, there's $120 million unfunded liabilities for retirement for town employees. I think half of this money could be put into the 32B20 trust, and the other half could be put into capital projects. And the tax rate for the taxpayer would remain unchanged instead of having a permanent override in the tune of 3%. I don't know really how much accountability there has been from the CPC. I know that they have somewhere between 100 and 200,000 a year just in administrative costs. But also I've been told that they're financed out till 2020. I mean, the taxpayer was allowed to vote this in. They're also allowed to vote it out. I think for them to mortgage us or leverage us that far into the future is kind of questionable. And this article simply asks that the taxpayers be allowed to decide where their money goes. I think it makes everybody happy. It frees up the money for the capital. It gives us money to put away and work away at that unfunded liability. Nowhere near enough to cover it. I mean, that's going to come home to roost someday, and it's not that far down the road. There's a second part of this quandary as well. And I just want the taxpayer out there to do a little investigating for themselves. But there's a thing called the United Nations Agenda 21. Basically, it's designed to eventually, in the end, eliminate all property rights, individual property rights. I think anyone should just Google it or use the search engine of their choice and make the decision on their own, whether they think there's any connection to this. They like to use the term smart growth, sustainable development. I think it's removes the rights from the taxpayer and puts it too much into the hand of the government. And like I said, the taxpayer should be allowed to vote on it and decide for themselves. It's quite that simple. Thank you very much.
Any
If you have any questions?
From Mr. Finner? No. Thank you very much.
Certainly.
And next, we want to, we're going to discuss and hopefully approve the T-Ticket Park conservation restriction. Jessica?
Thank you. And I have the concept plan here for T-Ticket Park, so I'm just going to grab the easel and move it over here.
Okay.
Okay, hopefully that stays up there. I'm Jessica Erickson, Administrator of the 300 Committee Land Trust, and I'm here this evening to talk with you about the conservation restriction for the Joe's Driving Range property. I'll give you just a little bit of the background for the sake of the public who may not be as familiar with the project. This 10.7 acre parcel was purchased by the 300 Committee in December of 2011. We had worked with folks from the T-Ticket Civic Association and neighbors and the community in general to develop a concept plan for how we envision this site to be used. It will be open to the public as a park, respecting the environment that it's in. There is a wetland there. One of our goals would be to restore the wetland. Another goal is to have ADA compliant trails so that this property can be accessible. We have envisioned a streetscape. I know you've seen the concept plan before, but as you'll notice on Route 28, the existing pavement would be removed and replaced with a streetscape of trees to sort of beautify the area and help, with some of the viewscape there. This project was funded through multiple funding sources. The Community Preservation Committee recommended $700,000. Of which $500,000 is being reimbursed through the state's Parkland grant program. So the conservation restriction is the subject, really, of the park grant. The state awarded $500,000 for the town's purchase of the park grant, and we hope to complete that transaction in May, which will also conclude our purchase of the property. We did buy the property in December, as I said, but we have installment payments to the Vieras. So the closing in May with the town will also result in all the transaction being finalized with the Vieras as well. So I do have a copy of the CR that I had provided. I'm happy to just give you a general overview of that. Certainly, everything that's shown in the park, or in the park concept plan itself, has a reserved right in the conservation restriction. For instance, parking. We want to be able to have a parking lot there. So of course, we're reserving the right to construct and to maintain a parking area. The same with the trails, ADA compliant trails. Some site work will be needed. Our goals are to minimize any excavation type work, to lower the costs, but also to minimize disturbance to the land itself. We also have provisions to put in a pavilion in the future. These types of things will be happening in phases as funding allows, grants allow for. Clearly, there's provisions for the wetland restoration work itself. We even thought of restrooms, not knowing what's going to come in the future. We would like the restrooms to discharge off the site. Important to preserve and protect the water quality. So there's provisions in the conservation restriction that do allow for restrooms, but there are requirements that have to be met for the discharge of the wastewater. I'm trying to think if there's anything else significant that I should point out. This CR has already been approved by the Conservation Commission. They vote a municipal certificate, essentially stating what the public benefit of this conservation restriction is. We've sent an early draft to the state. They've reviewed this. So we will be fine-tuning our plans, our engineering plans, and our design plans over the course of the next few months, and continuing to work with the state and with the town before we close on the CR and actually start doing some of the site work. But one of the important steps, of course, is having the Board of Selectmen's approval of the conservation restriction.
Questions, discussion from the board? I wanted to mention that we have three documents here to sign, and the first one, which is the conservation restriction, we sign as the Board of Selectmen. The second document relates to parkland acquisitions and renovations, and this we sign as the Park Recreation and Conservation, well, as the Park
Commission.
Park Commission, because under the statute, we become the Park Commission for this purpose. And that's the second document, and then the third document is a copy of the same. So,
Just for clarification, the 300 committee is purchasing the parcel.
Yes.
The town owns the conservation restriction.
Correct. The town will purchase the CR in May at the closing. Yes.
Melissa?
Thank you for all your work.
Absolutely, you're welcome.
In reading this, I noticed that, it's prohibited all kinds of little motorized vehicles and that passive recreation is allowed. The definition of passive recreation, does that include things like rollerblading and bicycles? Or I noticed that there are bike racks allowed to be in the parking lot, so has it gone that far yet?
I think, well, sort of to break the question up, so passive recreation basically means, the way the site itself is treated. So we're not allowing active recreation in terms of fields and that type of thing. Folks can walk, run, use their strollers. I believe that we would like to keep bicycles out, and that's something that we would have to post at the site. There is a provision for bike racks, but having bicycles going through the trails was not something that we wanted to see. So we would need to make those sorts of things clear early on so that folks know. But strollers, walking.
It is only 10 acres, so it's not like it's that large.
Right.
Although it's large.
It is large. When you're on the site, it's amazing when you go to the back of the property in the wetland area and you look back towards Cheetah Highway, and you can really get a feeling of how large the site is, and you can get a sense of what 10.7 acres is. It's a significant parcel of land, absolutely.
Thanks again.
Yes. Any comments from anybody from the public? No? We also have a copy of the municipal certification signed by the Conservation Commission here. So I guess our motion is to approve the conservation restriction.
I'll move that we approve the Conservation Commission, or Conservation Restricted as written and approved by the Conservation Commission.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. I'm going to pass these down so we can sign these and make sure they're done appropriately and we get them back. So we'll just take a minute to sign those. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I believe they require a notary, which I can do in the morning. I didn't bring that material with me.
Oh, okay.
So they can't walk away
But you are
with it,
witnessing our
yes,
signature
yes.
as you sit here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll notarize it and get it to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we have it on tape, too.
Yes.
Do you need me to stay for the project agreement, or?
I don't think so. No, we'll just give these to Heather. She can notarize them in the morning.
Fantastic. All
And
right.
we'll be all set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But I appreciate you taking the time to get it done now.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just want to make sure all the documents stay together and they're all signed properly so that tomorrow morning we find that, we don't want to find that somebody missed out.
Do we need to initial the plan?
No.
Okay.
Just simply sign on the pages that are marked to sign. I'm going to give these to you, Heather.
Okay.
Okay, very good. So now our next, the next part of our meeting tonight is the discussion of warrant articles for Board of Selectmen recommendation. So do we want to, I think we pretty much know which articles are ours. You know, those, did you want to?
We can comment on that,
Okay, go
Madam
ahead.
Chair, if we
Yeah,
may. and
sure.
Heather has some
This really
information.
was just an update to make sure that the board's engaged in preparation of next week's discussion.
Oh, okay.
So I just prepared a schedule for you, so you have a understanding of what you'll see over the next 2 weeks. Tonight, you heard the last of the presentations of the petitioners, and we'll identify and review the articles that the board has a main motion on. On Monday, the board will be presented simply with a list of the articles, and we'll ask you to take a position on those articles. And then we'll come back on March 12th with a written explanation.
Of what we discussed and voted on.
Previously, exactly. Now, I'll just note that you see the articles for the annual town meeting, the bottle bill resolution, the support to Selectmen's plan of action on wind turbines, the request to investigate remedial action on the water treatment plant, the request to appoint a solid waste manager, the secondhand dealers bylaw, and the 2 articles related to open-air parking. And then the special town meeting of Article 15, which is the advisory question you heard about this evening, and then Article 3, regarding accepting streets. I note that the article that Ms. Davis was in about has a main motion by the Finance Committee, so the board may also want to take that up to send whatever guidance you'd like to the Finance Committee, so we can place that on the agenda next week as well, if you'd like. And then I just note that next week, I don't believe when you place the article on the warrant for the Finance Department that creates a finance director and an office assistant, that the board voted to create those positions, and that's a specific requirement that you have to adopt before town meeting, so we'll also put that on the agenda next week.
That's good.
And then in the back, there's just a little bit of information related to the background on the road takings, and the CPC is informational, and you may want to keep Ms. Davis's explanation along with it for next week, and we can put this all in the packet again. So I just wanted the board to be aware of what was coming your way, so you had some thinking behind it, and if you need something from us in anticipation, you can let us know. That was it.
Any questions about what we're going to do next week and the week after related to the warrant? Melissa?
What are we going to discuss the articles regarding, oh, I guess we don't do the funding articles, do we? But Article 13, special town meeting that Brent just brought up tonight?
That's also on a Finance Committee recommendation because it's a funding article.
So
if the board wants to, we can put that on the agenda just like Ms. Davis's if you like, and so I'll take the direction from the chair as to how you'd like to handle both of those. So article.
Are we going to discuss strategies for any particular kind of
That's Article 20.
exclusions?
Right? Which one's on that page?
well, we're coming to the capital plan is next. Could we ask our Finance Committee Chairman, Gary Anderson, does the Finance Committee hasn't completed its work yet? There's still, like for instance, these funding articles that are still yet to be determined, like the ones we heard tonight, the petition articles. Do you?
Gary Anderson from Finance Committee.
You know what I'm saying?
We hope to complete our work tomorrow night. There are a couple of articles that are a little bit complex. We have also posted for Wednesday night. One of the more complex ones is Article 6, which involves a multitude of transfers between departments. And so we're working with the town accountant to get all that information together. I would suggest to you that we would offer input on articles, I think it's of the annual town meeting, Articles 23 and 27, we would offer some financial input, but I believe that those articles probably would be the Board of Selectmen to make recommendations upon. They're both petitioner articles. With respect to the rest of the articles, I think there may be one other one where we're still gathering some information on a special. I think it has to do with the dollar amounts in Article 9. There's some questions there that we are trying to resolve. I will tell you that the articles that we have dealt with, or that they're pretty much mandatory that we do, is going to eat up virtually all of the free cash that there is. So there'll be about $1.98 left. So I don't know if that answers your question, Madam Chair.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. We hope to complete tomorrow night.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Can I just clarify, on the article assignments, Article 23 was under the Finance Committee, but you'll provide guidance and we'll look to the board for the main motion?
Yes.
So we'll add that to your list.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks.
Anybody have any questions about that? Seems pretty clear. Okay, now we're going to talk about the proposed capital recommendations, which is Article 21 on the annual.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Back at the board's meeting, I believe it was on February 6th, the board had asked for some alternative proposals. to fund capital for a period of time varying from 1 to 3 years. And pursuant to that, with the Heather Harper's assistance and that of department heads, we solicited revised and updated requests from departments in the town, and over the past week to 10 days, I've been sorting and reviewing those and presented that proposed year-by-year package to the board, varying from 1.67 million proposed for FY13, 1.74 9 million FY14, and 1.746 for FY15. Also included and again, I want to note that each of those years can stand alone or be part of a multi-year debt or capital exclusion, as the board, working with FinCom, might ordain. And also wanted to note that the building-related projects, Madam Chair, on page 4 of my transmittal to the board, I had suggested could be considered to be packaged as part of energy-related projects under an ESCO approach, which is provided for in statutes in the Commonwealth and has been commonly done in a number of areas, and could be taken up as early as the November town meeting later this year. And those are listed as noted among the capital projects on page 4. Those are not included in each of the 3-year smaller non-building projects prior to that. And then lastly, the suggestion, Madam Chair and members of the board, is that we set aside an amount of funding sufficient to allow us to closely approximate the debt service, the borrowing needed for the 3-year public works projects that are concluding in the present year, approximately $1.1 million per year, which would mean that we would supplement these proposals with a little over $400,000 annually, potentially from the meals tax or other funds, which we would be happy to pursue on behalf of the board, so that the concept being that taxpayers would essentially be held harmless going forward with the funding support which has been provided each of the last 3 years. Be happy to talk about the projects in greater detail, and certainly if the board would determine that we would go forward in any particular form, we would be providing much greater detail. I do also want to affirm that unlike the last 3 years, this does not exclusively include Public Works, but is attempted to include many of the other departments whose needs we were not really able to entertain for the past 3 years, so that police, fire, schools, and others are also considered for proposed capital funding. And lastly, Madam Chair, I do want to affirm before the board, we've had discussions recently indicating that a reasonable annual amount for capital needs would be in the $3 million area. I certainly found that to continue to be the case. I could easily have added $1.5 to $2 million in spending projects throughout town departments for your consideration, but my mission was to keep those amounts a little bit more in check over the coming 1 to 3 years. And as we prepared for consideration for potentially a longer-term, larger capital proposal along the lines that's been discussed by the Capital Review Subcommittee that Finance Committee Chair Gary Anderson had established earlier this year. So this would be again, a 1 to 3 year gap that would begin to stabilize some of the town's capital needs, but I would not suggest that it's going to meet them all. And I will tell you that the departments included on these 3 lists would have preferred to receive additional capital funds. Many of the categories are funded at somewhat less than the maximum amount requested, but again, the mission was to come up with a more modest proposal moving forward and begin to stabilize our circumstances subject to the board's concurrence. Be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Melissa?
I'd just like to point out that well, thank you for your suggestions, Julie. And at the end of your recommendations that you gave us, you had the ESCO projects, the energy projects that are included here. And I heard Paul Gentile speak about this again the other night at a conference. And if we're going to go this route with sort of funding piecemeal our capital budget for the next couple of years, I think we really need to hotly pursue the ESCO funding so that we can start implementing these energy-saving projects that will ultimately then relieve the town of a couple $1 million worth of capital projects that are in the pipeline and that certainly need to happen. So I hope that we can get that through November's town meeting. It's a fantastic form of revenue. We could turn our buildings into revenue generators instead of revenue sappers if we do these high-energy retrofits. But again, if we don't do this, then all of these projects will have to go into the capital plan eventually over the next couple of years. So let's hope that the voters approve of all of this.
Well, just to kind of to recap where we've been and what we're looking at tonight, is the Capital Advisory Committee did a great deal of work and came out with a very strong plan for the town to be able to meet its capital needs. And the funding for that plan, though, was, I would say it had some kind of consensus, but not necessarily total agreement as to how it would be funded. But it clearly pointed out that we have significant capital needs that we can't simply continue to ignore, nor can we even put off, in a certain sense, forever and ever. So their plan was, and perhaps at one point, was to even consider a major override of like maybe $3 million. That wasn't necessarily something I think that the committee really voted on, but I think that there were strong feelings among a number of the members of the advisory committee that was a bold action that the town should really consider. Then along with that, our town manager comes along, which we were very happy to have. And then we looked at the fact that we had this debt that was retiring this June 30th, that's $3 million over a course of 3 years, which is $1.1 million the first year and $1 million and then $1.1 million, I think something in that neighborhood. So it's an opportunity to meet capital needs without adding to the tax burden, adding additionally to the tax burden. So it was an opportunity to do something like that. But unfortunately, that was, as Julian said, it was really set up to handle the DPW projects because they really needed to be done. Now this capital plan includes projects that are that are in addition to DPW, but they are still projects that need to be done. So, but now we're looking at not just $1.1 million, we're looking at $1.7 million each year, which is a little bit more. And in order to reach that, if we want to maintain, and that's something that we need to decide, do we want to simply maintain the tax rate at its current level of the $1.1 million and look at the potential, at least for this year, or maybe next year, of utilizing the meals tax to make up the difference if there is sufficient funds coming in from the meals tax to do that. And in the meantime, if we decide to go in that direction, hopefully town meeting will approve the article that creates a finance department and a finance director. And once we have a person in place, which probably wouldn't happen until maybe July, it's hard to say. We don't know what the market is, because you don't know what the market is until you really get into the market. But we would certainly be looking for an experienced finance director, and that would be one of the responsibilities of the finance director in a way is to build on this capital plan and to work with the capital advisory committee and to really make this this capital plan meaningful, to put it in place, to do the outreach, to get the public input, to get the public acceptance, if you will, of a project like this, and then begin to move it forward and expand it and then plan on it so that over the course of time, we do begin to meet our capital needs, both our infrastructure and all of the other pieces associated with it. So what we're looking at tonight really is a version of the capital plan that includes more items other than DPW, includes police department and technology and water. Obviously, replacing water meters, which is huge, because water meters provide revenue, and if they're not working very well, then they're pretty useless to us if they're not generating, if they're not properly functioning and providing us with the revenue we need. Building repair and maintenance, libraries, bikeways, vehicles, servers, the beach, the harbor master, there's a whole range of capital projects here. So I guess to kind of frame what we need to think about tonight is, do we want to go forward with this as it's presented with a price tag of $1.6 million, utilizing the meals tax and maybe some other funding that might be available? Do we want to move forward with this? Do we want to move forward with it over the 3-year period? Do we want to do it over a 2-year period? I personally would never want to recommend 1 year, because the minute you do it, you're starting on the next year. And then you have to go back and do it all over again. And a 2-year period, I would think, at least would give us the opportunity, assuming and hoping the town meeting approves the finance department articles, that a person would be on board and would give that individual at least time to come in, do all the things that the finance director would have to do, and in the meantime, take up the capital plan from there and working with the capital advisory committee and the finance committee, moving it forward, but at least have a period of maybe not have the pressure of having to immediately begin to develop another article for town meeting next year when there's a million other things to do. So my suggestion would be 2 years at a minimum, and 3 if the board can think that that would be the appropriate way to go. So those are my comments on this plan. Anybody want to? Yes, Melissa.
Well, I think those are good comments. I am recalling our joint meeting of the Finance Committee, the School Committee, and the Board of Selectmen a few weeks ago when Cindra McNerney, our representative from
Southwest,
our deaf people, mentioned that funding an operating budget with non-recurring revenue is unsustainable, but we are in the process of getting a finance director, we hope, who will be able to then find a sustainable way to move us forward. And I think we definitely need to fund these, I'd say 95% of these projects that are on this list this year. And then next year's projects are also definitely warrant funding. So I would think that since we don't know when we'll have a finance director, I think it would be probably prudent of us to try to get the funding for the 2 years, or try to get the approval to move forward with this plan for 2 years, so that the finance director and the town will have a viable funding mechanism, at least to get us through this fiscal year or these next 2 fiscal years, and then have the finance director find a more sustainable way to keep our capital projects moving forward.
Well,
and also this, again, this ESCO concept will fund quite a number of the capital projects at effectively zero cost to the town. So it is a win-win-win-win situation, but I think we'll get a presentation on that in the near future.
Now, does the ESCO, when does that fit in the first year, the second year, or all 3 years?
We need to apply for it first.
I know you have to apply for it, so you don't really know. Probably not.
Yeah, probably in the second tier,
probably
Madam
the
Chair.
second tier.
Subject to Selectmen and Town Meeting approval, that would authorize our entering into a contract with ESCOs, qualified ESCO firms.
Okay. I think they're narrowing it down on a firm. Our energy coordinator is currently doing that right now. But there's a number of things that we need to maintain in the future to keep that even in the plans. And if that doesn't work, then we have quite a number of large town building projects that will need to be executed regardless. So I think a 2-year plan is a prudent way to start, and it's a pretty conservative way to start. I mean, 2 years out is not far.
No, it's not. Right?
Well, Madam Chairman, I respectfully disagree. As I mentioned in our last discussion with this, obviously the time we have between now and town meeting is not nearly enough to put together the necessary plans and certainly to discuss with the public the issues that we have here and why the funding is needed. But 2 years seems to me to be kicking the can down the road much too far. If you look just, for example, with the board and the potential turnover, in the next 12 months, we could have the potential of 1 new board member. So the majority of the board at that point, assuming such a scenario, would still be intact, and the plans that the board makes now could still continue to move forward. If we look 2 years down the road, we've got the potential for 3 members of the board being changed. In such a scenario, everything's up for grabs, and putting this off for 2 years, I think, is far too long of a time frame. It allows for far too much change. It allows for, there's far too much opportunity, if you will, for things to go awry in such a long-term plan. If we're serious about getting a grip on this budget and about getting these smaller capital projects addressed, I think it's something we should make a priority for the next year. And if we do any temporary measures at all, it should be just for 1 year. And then whatever permanent solutions we determine, we should implement in a year. Waiting 2 years, I think, is just sending this far too down the road. It allows us to talk now and let somebody else deal with the problem later. I think anything more than a year is not prudent.
Melissa?
Interesting comments, and if you recall the meeting that we had a few weeks ago with the, what are we calling your group? The subcommittee that's examining the capital plan.
This Capital Advisory Committee.
They had found almost $3 million worth of capital projects that should be funded now. And this plan that we have in front of us is for $1.6 million this year. So it's about half of what has been deemed necessary by many on this subcommittee. And so I think it's prudent to plan out. We're not, I think that the total that we're looking at right now is really just the total of what was suggested for this year. So I think that's a fairly conservative tack to take already on it. I understand your comments on how the board can turn over, but regardless of who is sitting here on the board, these projects need to happen, regardless of who's here.
Well, my thought on doing it only for 1 year is, let's say you do it for 1 year, then you have to start right away in September and start to plan for the next year. So you have to do all the same things again. You have to, take a look at the list, then you have to put together the warrant for town meeting, then you have to go through the whole idea of either a debt exclusion or a capital exclusion. And then while you're doing all that, you're taking the time up to repeat, in a certain sense, what you're doing now, instead of devoting your time to plan for the year after that. When you develop the whole 5-year plan and it begins to make sense, we also will have, in the course of this year, at least some idea of how the recovery might be going, whether it's going to move at a snail's pace or whether it's going to move at a better pace. We'll have a much better idea of what our revenues are over the course of the year. So we will have given ourselves a 2-year window to be able to assess our revenues, to assess our expenses, for the state to figure out where it's going to be over the next couple of years, things have improved somewhat in the state. And then, and we won't be like, trying to play catch-up. I thought 3 years was a bit much. It would be probably not totally necessary, but I think to go through all the planning process just for 1 year and then have to repeat it again and go through all the same mechanisms of what you have to go through, which is all the reviews and the warrant articles and the discussion and all of that, that we would be far better off doing 2 years and then devoting our time in the fall with a new director in doing a 5-year capital plan that really takes us forward with some sense of where we are in terms of revenues. That would be my thought. I know I did have a discussion about this with Selectman Murphy, who obviously is not here. He's very much opposed to a 3-year plan. He was fairly adamant about, I won't say adamant, but very much leaning toward a 1-year plan, but kind of said, well, he had he was open to a 2 years, so we didn't really get into it that much. I honestly thought he was coming back tonight so that we could actually resolve it with the full board, but I guess it's next week he returns, so. So anyway, David.
We hear about all these things that need to be done capital, and then you see it in writing here, and it's very daunting.
It is.
It is. The last thing we want is to have some of the top things on the list not happen because they're not funded, such as police cruisers and radios.
Radios, those are things, cars, that should be reoccurring. We shouldn't be even having them. They should be something that's just in the budget every year, I'm leaning towards a 2-year myself. I'd really like to know what Kevin's feelings are, though. Is this something we have to definitely decide tonight?
There's no vote on the...
There's no vote.
On the agenda.
Oh,
Just
there's no
discussed.
vote. Okay, we're just discussing it.
Just discussion.
Okay.
The sooner the board would determine, the better we are, obviously.
Do you want to comment on this? You're looking like you do. Yes. I can always tell when you want to say something.
I'm an open book, is that what you're saying?
That's good.
See right through you.
Thank you. This is one of those complex articles that the Finance Committee has yet to deal with. Article 21 of the annual. And there are some questions that I would pose. First, there is a 1.1 million debt exclusion that I believe is completed this year, so it goes away. I am not exactly sure what the Board of Selectmen is debating here, other than maybe a time frame. You're contemplating either a 1 or a 2-year, a 1-year capital exclusion, or perhaps a 2 or a 3-year debt exclusion to replace that which is going away. I'm not sure whether there is a permanent override of 1.17 million or some amount being proposed. I'm seeing some head shakes, so I'm assuming that is not among the alternatives. The other thing to consider is that there are some wastewater efforts that have been approved and need funding, and that I presume, in talking with Mr. Boyer, that there have been some, at least, if not commitments, at least some understanding that some of those endeavors will be seeking funding. And I'm not sure where that will come from. So this is a very complex and complicated approach. The way the article is written, my own question, and this would be perhaps one for Mr. Duffy, is, can this be proposed in the recommendation, or does the language of the article itself need to be constructed differently in order to even accomplish this? That's not something I really know. I merely pose that question. The other part of it that Mr. Suso has alluded to is the portion of the meals tax. The board, by policy, has said that no less than 25% of the meals tax would be committed to capital, no less than 25% would be committed to the stabilization fund to build reserves. The other 50% remains uncommitted. I've taken a look at what we've received over the past, I guess it's 12 months, and we had 11 months of receipts because we didn't get the December of 2010. And it appears as though that the meals tax projections will be in the neighborhood on an annualized basis of about $600,000, and I think that's reasonably close, which means $150,000 would go to the regular stabilization fund for reserves and at least $150,000 for capital, and we would have another $300,000 that would be uncommitted. If that wanted to go to capital, you'd have $450,000 available in total to go into there. So that's the other piece that Mr. Sousa was alluding to in his proposal there. I don't have a solution for you, and I think you're debating some of the right issues. Clearly, there is a capital need, and it is not going to go away. So I haven't added to your solutions there. I'm just asking for a little bit of clarification. And I'm not sure how the Finance Committee, if there is a quandary here, we may not be able to make a recommendation on this article. We would have to give our recommendation on town meeting floor.
Well, I think you're right. What we're discussing is this going to be a one-year capital exclusion or a two-year debt exclusion? And to take advantage of the retiring debt for the DPW, not the retiring debt, the other retiring debt that the wastewater management committee is looking at. Isn't that a different? That's a different amount of retiring debt.
I think,
go ahead.
That to be clear, that the wastewater management committee was looking to take advantage of all retiring debt.
All retiring
debt.
And they're fine for the next 2 years, but in order to create the window of opportunity to do the full design and construction of Phase 1, they would need to take advantage of all of it.
This year or next year? 2 years out.
You have to build on it every year.
Yeah, I think it was 2015, I thought was their first year.
2013.
So is what you're saying is that we shouldn't even be talking about
These are policy issues that the Board of Selectmen need to wrestle with.
No, what I'm saying is that if we commit to use the retiring debt from the DPW, from the debt exclusion for the capital, then that would mean that money is not going to be available to the WQMC, and it will diminish their...
Correct.
Didn't mean to complicate your life.
No, well, it's all
fact of
complicated,
life.
so it depends on what box you put it in. Really, is what it comes down to.
Pushes that off. It pushes the window off.
For
the major project.
For the major project without anyone asking for it.
Well, I think maybe what we should do is just then get that picture of the retiring debt for next year, for 2012. Where are we? 2011, 2012, 2013. 2014, 2015, and just see what it looks like. Maybe just take it from 2013 through 2020 and see what the retiring debt looks like over the next 7 years. And maybe have the wastewater management committee just really, I know that,
It sounds like this is where the idea for the major correction was
well,
coming
I mean,
into
the
play.
thing is, I don't think that we can afford to put off all of our capital needs for the next 7 or 8 years either. So we're going to have to really come to some sort of we're going to have to come to a decision about this.
Madam Chair, if I could just interject,
Sure.
I don't think anyone would reasonably consider accommodating wastewater debt to the exclusion of all the balance of the town's daily operating capital needs, and so I want to make it clear that I think the proposal about the ongoing capital needs of the town and the $3 million per year figure envisioned the projects that you have before you today, commitments about long-term debt for wastewater and water are complex, they're very significant, and they merit considerable additional review and analysis for opportunities as they arise. but in my humble opinion, they should not be to the exclusion of the critical departmental needs, many of which have been foregone for the last 3 to 5 years, as the board is well aware. So as town manager, I would not want to suggest that you exclude consideration of the important and critical daily service delivery projects that are in front of you now. Certainly, there is time for that to be further discussed in the days to come, but I do want to underscore that water and wastewater discussions, there's much information yet to be gathered in both of those areas. They are major investments over a long term, and while we have highly qualified committees working on those diligently, they are of a different nature than the projects that are in front of you. And while I would love to suggest that free cash is going to, as it has in many years past, cover your capital needs, that is not likely to be the case any longer. So that is, I believe, why this project list was brought to you, and I think the direction the board was going, and I welcome that discussion further in the days to come.
Well, I don't think that we can put this off, and so I think we're going to have to take it up next week, and we're going to have to be prepared to vote on it.
Yeah.
And I think the things that, the issues that will come before us are, do we do a one-year plan, a two-year plan? I think we all pretty much agree that maybe a three-year plan we don't need to do, that we need to have, we need to end up next year sometime by the year after a whole five-year plan that really takes us forward. And then we need to look at whether or not we're going to just use the debt exclusion that we already have that's retiring and not go beyond it, or whether we are going to go beyond it to meet some of the other items that are on the list, that whether it will take us to $1.3 million or $1.5 million or $1.6 million, depending on how much we utilize the meals tax, and any other sources of revenue. I can't imagine what they would be at this point. Probably not any, but I think we need to take a look at what policy decisions we're going to make regarding the debt exclusion and regarding the other revenue funds that we know are available under the meals tax, and there probably won't be any other. So how much do we want to use based on the commitments we've already made of 25% to stabilization and 25% to the capital fund? So, Brent.
And just to be clear, what we're talking about here is, in essence, a 1 or 2 year stopgap measure before we sit down and look at the potential of a permanent override?
No, we're looking at a five-year plan. We don't know how the funding will work out. We don't know whether we can continue to do it with a debt exclusion, or whether we want to go an override. I think that gives us a couple of years to come to that decision. Right now, we're not looking at an override. We're not talking about an override now for the first year or the second year. We're looking at a debt exclusion. And an override is a major thing. There are some people who believe we should have an override, a permanent override of $3 million a year to be able to maintain our infrastructure. Some people believe that. I hear from a lot of people that say, we need to raise our taxes. I mean, truly, I'm just saying that there are people who believe that, because the taxes here, I don't mean here just in Falmouth, but on the Cape, are much lower than what they are in many other places where people have lived before they came here. That doesn't mean that it's something you want to do. But people look at, for instance, the bike path. People say we have this wonderful bike path. We're pushing the bike path. We're advertising it. We're marketing it. We're telling people they can come. But the roads that they have to bike on to get to the bike path are falling apart. So they say, I take my life in my hands when I get on my bike and go down a certain road, because the road is full of potholes, it needs repairs, and that's what I have to go through before I even get to the bikeway. So, it's all of those things. And these are important issues, but when you decide them at least for the future. And you try to make those commitments as well as you can. Obviously, some things will crop up along the line that you have to deal with, that somehow you have to adapt. But in this particular thing, I think these are the things that we're going to have to be prepared to take up next week and make a decision on, because we don't have time. We don't really have the luxury of time to go any longer than that. And if there's anything you think you might need in the way of, I think it would be helpful to have the revenue from now until 2020. I think that would just help. I think any bit of information, at least we know what we're looking at. Did you have your hand up, Doug? Yeah, sure.
Things you want for that.
Doug Jones, Precinct 1, just one point. I think the last capital exclusion was voted down by the voters, and I would just encourage you to think, which one do you think the voters will vote for most readily? I like the idea of a 2-year plan, but I think the voters might not go for it, and we need to come up with a plan that the voters actually will support, because if you don't do the capital plan, we're going to be in big trouble. And so really decide which is the one we think the whole town, the town meeting, the selectmen, and the town will vote for, because if we don't pass anything, some of those buildings are going to be in big shape.
Yes, thank you for saying that. That's true. The only thing that makes this one different is that it doesn't raise the taxes. The ones we had before, they 30 cents or 80 cents, whatever it was. This one, it would absolutely remain the same as it is now. There would be no change to the tax rate based on a debt exclusion of $1.1 million.
But maybe not a reduction you're expecting.
No, but, yeah. That's true. Yeah, and that's another thing that would be helpful. If we didn't do this and the tax rate went down, what would the drop amount to? 62 cents per thousand, 40 cents, whatever, I don't know. But I'm sure Dave Bailey could give us that info. In other words, if we didn't continue to use it, how much would the tax rate change?
How many more potholes will we have?
9 cents? That's it?
That's it.
Pretty close to 9 cents.
Quite a bit of infrastructure to fall apart.
9 cents per thousand, so a $400,000 house would be $32?
$36.
Well, I think that's important to know.
It's 5 Starbucks.
Huh?
It's 5 trips to Starbucks?
Depends on what you buy when you get to Starbucks.
I don't know. I don't know what it costs there.
It's also a tank of gas for a little old lady. I have got a neighbor, she fills her car, and that's what it takes to fill her car.
Where did she get her car? $36?
Okay, can we conclude this discussion, or do you have more that you'd like to say before next week? And we'll have to put it on for a fairly decent amount of time, because we have a lot to take up. And actually, the full board will be here as appropriate, that it's appropriate we do that. But that's a lot of work, Mr. Town Manager. Thank you for all that, putting that together. That
Certainly, I've had a lot of help. Happy to do it. Thank you.
Okay, so now we have the minutes of February 6th.
Madam Chair, I'll move that we approve the minutes of February 6th, 2012 as written.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. The minutes of February 13th.
I'll move that we approve those also as written.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. By the way, that was a really good meeting with the planning board, I thought. And then we have the executive minutes of February 9th.
I'll move that we approve them. I have questions about releasing, but I'll move that we approve them as written.
Second. These are
I haven't, it's discuss.
discuss and vote to release.
Are we allowed to release them?
No. Wait a minute, we're talking about first...
February 9th.
Comma, discuss and vote to release.
They should not be released.
No, these should, no, this is...
Right.
No, wait a minute, it's approve the executive session minutes of February 9th.
And that's what I moved.
Then discuss and vote to release the joint meeting, not the executive session. So we're voting only to approve the executive session minutes of February 9th.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second.
I move to approve the minutes as written.
And not to release them.
Correct, I'll move not to release.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain, I was not present.
Okay, now we're going to have the minutes of February 9th, the joint meeting
Those are fantastic.
of the Finance Committee, School Committee, and Board of Selectmen.
I'll move that we approve the minutes of the joint meeting of Finance Committee, School Committee, and Board of Selectmen for February 9th, as written. You weren't there.
I left, you know, I saw
Oh, that's right.
abstaining. I'm abstaining.
Oh, so we can't vote
You
them
weren't there,
because
right?
Kevin
I would
wasn't here.
abstain, yes.
So we'll have to take them up next
was
time.
only there for the
When you
beginning.
say- You missed a really good
executive-
meeting. Yeah, you were there in the beginning. It was
executive session,
really a good meeting.
Get it on TV?
I thought.
Those are really good. You were sick.
Yeah, it was nice to have all three boards hear the same information, particularly from our financial advisors. It was very good. Okay, now we're looking at the special events, and this is the request for the Easter service. Oh, wait a minute. Their special events is the Easter service sunrise on Surf Drive Beach on April 8th, and a request for PAL, the 5K road race on March 24th.
Second.
Okay.
Just a quick question and discussion regarding the...
Are you approving one and two?
Yeah, I am. Or I'm...
Vote, motion to.
Both of them. Regarding the road races, we've been approving so many of them lately, and I'm familiar with this one, and I know that there had been a suggestion that we move the calendar into the office here, and I would hope that it would just be a copy of the calendar, but do we know if we have any other road races in town on this particular date? Just out of curiosity.
Well, we asked Diane to check with approval to see if there's anything else on the same day, and this wouldn't come before us if there were.
So not even, okay.
Right. Okay, so motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, here are the signatures then for what we have voted on tonight. And these are a couple of liquor licenses that need to be signed while you're doing that and while we hear the town manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple items. Just to confirm, this past week, I met on both Tuesday and Wednesday evening with the Finance Committee as part of their ongoing review and deliberations. Among those budgets discussed were, of course, police and fire. I do want to thank members of the Finance Committee for their dedication and ongoing hard work in this important process. As Finance Chair Gary Anderson noted, they do have posted meetings for tomorrow evening and Wednesday as well. We look forward to continuing to work with them going forward. Also, the first phase of our town hall insulation remediation process went forward successfully over the President's Day weekend. We're proceeding in a series of closely monitored steps, and we'll continue to report back to the board on those. And that concludes my report.
Okay. Selectmen reports. Melissa?
Mr. Suso forgot to mention that he was at a sea level rise conference a week and a half ago. Webner sponsored a conference at Hui on sea level rise, and I was very happy to attend it, and I was very happy to see Mr. Suso also in attendance.
Thank you.
And our acting department chair of natural resources was also there, as well as many members of our coastal management committee, and I think it was a sold-out crowd, over 200 people from surrounding towns and even from the vineyard who are involved in policymaking, and it was enlightening to see some images of Falmouth under some projected sea level rise during certain storms, and hopefully we'll be able to get a little workshop here in Town Hall so that the viewers at home as well as the board can see what kinds of policy decisions might have to be made in the not so distant future. It was really disturbing, but enlightening at the same time, and a vigorous day of intellectual activity. Very healthy. And the keynote speaker was an esteemed professor from Harvard's geophysical department, and he was a very engaging speaker. regarding trends in carbon dioxide and meltings, the melting of the southern ice caps and Greenland, and how it all affects airflow and Falmouth. And other than that, I did go to another conference or a workshop at the library the other day, also on climate change with our energy coordinator, and he was talking about the ESCO projects that he will bring to us. He actually brought the project to us a few months ago and discussed it then, and they are moving forward with the energy committee as well as our energy coordinator are moving forward. They've narrowed their vendors down to 2, I believe, and they'll be choosing a vendor in the near future and presenting their choice to the board in the very near future, so that we can move forward with some energy retrofits and some roof repairs and some window installations at practically no cost to the town. And then, of course, as I mentioned and as he mentioned, we'll turn our buildings actually into revenue generators, because we'll actually be saving energy and not be expending these massive energy bills. That's about it for now.
David?
Just, Madam Chair, as you know, since December, I've been concerned about numerous issues, and I just want to report back on some of them, because there's been some positive things that have happened. There was a concern, as you know, I brought up about that trailer that we had that is caused in disrepair, but I've neglected to meet with Julian and Mr. Hoffer yet, because I know Julian's been very busy. We've discussed it. We're just going to meet to discuss the whole sequence of events that led that trailer to the condition it's in. But as I said, I've held off on that because of the time he's taking to put into budget issues, which to me right now are a little more important. I had a concern about the amount of operators down our water plant. They're actively right now advertising for some. I'm not going to speak on the attic or the turbines. I think right now they speak for themselves. Julian knows I'm very concerned about the condition of our fire hydrants. The Minot Beach I had brought up about the asbestos pipe. All the pipe that was exposed has been removed at this point. I've also been concerned about town council being in a town building. I've been assured by the town manager that something positive may be happening with that, maybe within a few months, that Mr. Duffy's rent is now month to month. There's no more lease. I also have a concern, which I still have, about our town engineer not being actually a certified engineer, and that's something I've discussed with Julian. I'm not sure what will happen with that, but he knows I have a concern about it. I brought up a week or so ago, Madam Chair, really this is for you, about the bylaw revision committee, and I know you said it's a committee that's chaired by town council, but I did pull out the part of the charter which just says that every 5 years, commencing in 1990, the Board of Selectmen shall appoint a bylaw revision committee. And I don't know if we've advertised for it, and I know it seems like a very minor issue in the scope of everything we're discussing this evening, though it is in the charter. I'd like to see at some point some movement on that. I had talked to Julian the other day about some revenue that a lot of towns in Massachusetts are having trouble getting, and it happens to do with a law that went into effect, Chapter 94C32L, which is civil marijuana tickets, which you can receive a ticket for an ounce or less for $100. The problem is, when they wrote the law, they did not put a provision in there for law enforcement to enforce it, to get the money. And if you look at the law, it all has to be done by a constable. The town of Falmouth right now has 70 of those tickets that are unpaid, which is $7,000. The cost of a constable comes on to monies he actually adds on as court costs. So we would still get our $100, but I was wondering if it's something, I asked Julian if it's something he would consider speaking with one of our 3 or 4 constables. I don't even know how many we have anymore. If one of them are really up to doing this. I know last year I checked with Barnstable. Last year they had 50. I can imagine these tickets are just piling up, and there's a lot of towns not getting the revenue from them. And it's true revenue, it's there. I spoke with the clerk's office, and she said she has 70 out of the 123 that we've issued since 2009 have not been paid. So that's something we could look at. Just a thought, looking under every stone, so. That's all I have to say this week, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Devin. Right? Yeah.
I have nothing.
I have three things. Today, I happen to be present for the Open Cape press conference. It was down in Dennis, and there were a representative from Senator Kerry's office was there, Congressman Keating was there, our state delegation, David Vieira was there, Randy Hunt, the rep from Sandwich, and just all kinds of people. And what it really was kind of a midpoint press conference related to how things are going. And the fiber is being constructed as we speak. Falmouth will be the first town to be connected because of Woods Hole. And in the summertime, they're going to stop constructing on the Cape, and they're going to do all their constructing down towards Providence and up towards Boston, because that's necessary to create the loop. And then back in the fall, they'll finish up the laying of the hanging of the fiber. Then that's the infrastructure. That's the pathway that allows all of this connection to happen. Then the piece about how do we as a community or as a town be able to access this and the types of services that will be available. That's referred to as a RUS, which is a Regional Umbrella Services System. That has nothing to do with Open Cape. Open Cape is really just laying the infrastructure, and then it's up to decide who is going to provide those regional services that allow the connections from all the towns to take place. So the proposal was that maybe Barnstable County should be the group that does that. And so the Board of Commissioners, County Commissioners, voted last week to take on the responsibility of the RUS, which is the Regional Area Network, which will actually create all of the services that towns want and are going to want to be to access this infrastructure. And it's long, detailed, and very technical, but I will have someone come in and explain to us how that's all going to work out. Just as an example, well, the other piece to it is the Cape Cod Economic Development Council decided about 3 months ago that they wanted to find a way to help the towns understand what they have now in terms of their technology and what they might need in order to be able to really utilize this Open Cape, this network. So they put out an RFP. They had actually 10 people respond, 10 companies, and they are going to go out, send these people out to go to every single town, to every IT department, every single school, library on the Cape, and find out what is the town using. Is it going to be compatible with the Open Cape infrastructure? What are they going to need in order to be able to have that connection? So that's going to happen sometime over the course of the summer, and they expect to have it completed in August. So they will have a report on kind of what everybody needs. And I know Falmouth has, we've already approved money at town meeting to add, I think, 6 more buildings to be connected to it. So there's that. Then, as an example, some of the towns have already been asking, and this is at the Cape Selectmen's Association meeting, they're asking, well, what are we going to save? What is it really going to mean for us? So Dan Gallagher, who's the CEO of Open Cape, was in Provincetown, and the Board of Selectmen wanted to know, just basically, because there's a phone service that goes with this too. You don't have to have phones from Verizon or anybody else. There's a whole phone service. So you could actually pick up a phone here and just connect immediately, say, to the Public Works Director in Sandwich, if you wanted to do that. So there's the phone service, there's the internet service. So Verizon, maybe Comcast. Provincetown now pays $60,000 a year for their phone and internet connection for their town employees. They don't have that many town employees. So they asked what might they possibly save by participating in the RAN, which is the Regional Area Network. And the cost would be somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 as opposed to $60,000. So that's just for one town. So, I mean, the savings are really going to be huge. So what the county's going to do, we're going to put out an RFP for someone, a consultant who can come in and work with us and help set up this whole regional area network for us, what all of our needs are, and so forth. That's one thing. But the Open Cape project is on time, on budget. It will be completed in January of 2013. So it behooves everybody to, to move along and get everything together so you're ready to go. Now, Cape Cod Net is the partner, I guess, if you will. They're the ones that are going to be able to sell the services commercially, so that or even for you, as in your home, if you decide that you want to have a connection, then you go through Cape Cod Net. But the whole beauty of this whole thing is that it keeps the costs down for towns particularly, because there's no profit. There's no way that anybody makes any profit out of it. Open Cape doesn't make a profit, and obviously the county doesn't make a profit. The county may charge for some of the services, but they would obviously be reasonable and would not be for the purpose of profit. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was the special commission that has been looking at county governance and looking at Barnstable County being a strong government, being a government that has a sustainable and recurring revenue, and a government that can be responsive to the towns and the citizens that it represents, because the county has no governing role over any town at all. The county is there to serve the citizens, really, of Cape Cod, they're not in a governance structure. But the state has, you probably saw the article from the state delegation, the Cape delegation, regarding wastewater. The special commission has been making recommendations to the commissioners to do something in the area of wastewater, to find regional solutions, and these are not broad and general and apply to everybody. They are really watershed solutions. They are not necessarily a town solution. It's really looking at watersheds, sheds that are adjacent perhaps. Like the only watershed we really share is with Mashpee in Wacoit Bay. None of our other watersheds, except maybe, I don't even think in Bourne, because of Buzzards Bay, we don't share a watershed with Bourne. That's the only watershed we really have. So we're sort of unique in a way. But anyway, what we did was we, based on the recommendation from the Special Commission, we directed Paul Niedzwiecki, Executive Director of the Cape Cod Commission, and Andrew Gottlieb, who's the Executive Director of the Water Protection Collaborative, to work together with the Cape Cod Commission and with the Water Collaborative to develop a regional plan for wastewater solutions for the Cape. Now, that's pretty general, and it's not specific. There have been emails that have suggested that what the commissioners are doing is creating an MWRA, a taxing authority, and that is not the case. That was under discussion by the Special Commission in terms of how one pays for this, using the MWRA as an example. But the tasks that that the commissioners gave to Paul and Andy were to come up with a regional plan for dealing with wastewater solutions that also deal with funding. And if there is any legislation that is required, to come up with what that legislation might be. But the major thing is, how can we get other funding other than individual taxpayers paying through their property tax or some other way for these wastewater solutions? And the only way that any funding outside the Cape will be available is either through the state or the federal government, even though we've been told a million times by the federal government they're not interested. But the only way it'll ever happen is to have a regional plan, and so that's what they're doing. And their task is to come back to the commissioners by the end of the year with the plan. And David's a member of the collaborative, so I don't usually go to those meetings, but we've asked that they work very closely with the collaborative, because they are, the collaborative is made up of a selectman from every single town on the Cape. They're really selectmen. The other task they were given was that the plan had to have broad public outreach. They have to meet with every Board of Selectmen on the Cape. They have to have public forums, which they had before with the TMDLs and the science issue, public forums all around the Cape, Upper Cape, Mid Cape, Lower Cape, that whatever plan they come up with has broad public input and is reflective of the needs and the views of the people who live on Cape Cod. So that's the task. And aren't you glad it's them and not us? That's what I say. Anyway, that's my report.
Actually, very quickly before we...
Yes.
I had received 3 calls on my home today asking if we approved a stop by this political thing today on Peg Noonan Park, the bus stop. There was a political thing on...
Oh, that was...
I'm only asking, because they were asking me, why did they not have to seek approval? Is it because it's political, or?
No, because they're on a bus, and they're going to get off the bus, and they're going to stand there and for about, 5 minutes, and then they're going to get back on the bus. They're not having an event.
Well,
I know, they've already had, maybe Jillian, you want to talk
we
about
reviewed that with Town Council Frank Duffy, who confirmed that, they're permitted to stop at a public park, disembark, get back on and leave.
Okay.
And the board's not required to oversee or
I'm
approve
just
that.
asking the question for...
Good question.
Secondly, if the trust fund goes through in town meeting for OPEB, what is your yearly investment going to look like in that? What do you think is... I know we're looking at 120 million eventually, but...
Well, we had not yet determined, we're in some discussions with the Finance Committee about possibly allocating some, again, non-recurring funds for that purpose so that we can source it this year. I would personally hope it might be in the $50,000 to $100,000 area, dependent upon resources, of course, but that has not yet been finalized.
Well, and when you think about it, there's still the pension liability that still has to be met, although I think Falmouth is 61%, 62% toward the funding the pension liability, but that is 2038. Did you choose 2038 or 2040? 2038. I think it's 2038. So that goes along at the same time. Now, I heard that Cleon Turner, he's the rep from Dennis, had filed 2 bills related to OPEB and the state, and I don't know what they are, but I'll have to find out what they are. I think one of them, something had to do with post-employment vacation benefits. So I'm not really, So anyway, but I think we need to find out what kind of bills he's filed in the State House. Anything else? A motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor? Aye.
The Nimrod, a restaurant steeped in history and tradition, is located on Dillingham Avenue. Their phone number is 508-540-4132. They offer an extensive lunch and dinner menu for all your tastes and spirits for any occasion. The Nimrod features music to suit all moods in a warm atmosphere. The Nimrod is a proud sponsor of Falmouth Community Television and their coverage of town meeting. Stop by and visit us at the Nimrod Restaurant.
The Falmouth Chamber of Commerce is dedicated to ensuring the economic vitality of its member businesses. We seek to promote a supportive, innovative, and successful business environment. Member benefits include marketing and advertising opportunities, business referrals, medical and dental insurance, business after hours, new member receptions, comfortable network activities, and more. We exist to promote you and to help you prosper. The Falmouth Chamber of Commerce, serving Falmouth since 1914.